Hello, welcome back to another video, people. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. And this is your first of a double upload day. One West Ham, one non-West Ham. But we will be having a stream later with Prime at 10 p.m, people. So come and join us for that. And we'll have the West Ham United versus Aston Villa match preview on Friday. Pre-recorded, not streamed. But listen, people, make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe if you are new. And there's a couple stories we can talk about. A couple stories we can briefly talk about. And it's just kind of interesting just to do another West Ham video, just in general, because there's not really much going on. But at the same time, it's just there's a couple of things we can talk about just in general. But let's get into the first headline. Todibo. Marseille inquired about Jean-Claire Todibo's availability, but he informed his representatives that he was happy and he had no interest in leaving. He has no desire to entertain any dialogue with Marseille. He feels settled in London and wants to repay the faith. When I first read this, I thought it was going to be something bad. Because how many times have we gone through this before where we've had a good summer transfer window, and then like 6 months later, we see that one of the players that we've recently just bought is, up for sale, or they don't mind selling him, or one of the players are unhappy. It's happened with Paquetá before. It's happened with Scamacca. It's happened with Tilo Kera, Areola. It's happened with so many players. So I'm glad he's happy. I'm glad he's happy here. I think his unhappiness here is purely literally because of the fact that he was with Lopetegui. Because obviously he fell out with him. So that does make sense. I thought maybe that because of the position we are in the table, because of the fact that we've changed manager again, that maybe a lot more players would be unhappy. I'm sure they're not exactly delighted with the situation, and I'm sure Todibo's frustrated with the season in general, with the manager he's had to work with, but also with the fact that he's had a couple injuries, so he hasn't really been able to settle in on the pitch, but he seems settled off the pitch. And this would kind of make sense. I know France is obviously his home nation, but he has just moved from France to England. And also he's on loan to us, and it's going to be an obligation to buy. So I don't think that a transfer is even possible, because he's technically on loan. So how are you going to hijack the loan when he's going to be a permanent player next season? So even if you wanted to, let's say it was possible, you wanted to get a transfer in, you'd have to loan him for 6 months to terminate our loan, which I don't think you do because it's obligatory. But then also by the summer, you'd have to loan him again because we would have literally just bought him as a permanent player. So I don't think that was ever going to make any sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure a lot of players would leave West Ham United for Marseille. I know we like to look down on the French league, but Marseille are a bigger club and more ambitious and more likely to be in Europe. So you got to look at it like that. I know a lot of people might want to move to London. That's why a lot of players want to move to West Ham United, because Arsenal or Chelsea might not be in for them, but you can move to West Ham because it's London. You get to, I don't know, see the fucking London Eye and all that nonsense. But this kind of makes sense. This kind of makes sense in a way, because I appreciate the character from Todibo to stick with West Ham, even though I don't think a transfer was possible. As I just said, if you're in a position where you just moved to the club, I don't think he's performed badly in many games either, and he's still settling in. It's his first season in. I think there's a really good player in there if we actually allow him to get fit. Apparently, he's out for 5 weeks, unfortunately. So pretty much write this season off. But you can see the difference with, he even makes Kilman much better. Like, he makes the midfield much better. He makes the fullbacks much better because he has a commanding presence at the back. I do think they both have a balance of leadership and would be a good partnership in general if they were settled. I do think this guy at Todibo is a little bit injury prone because he's one of them defenders that has to rely on his pace, which, not rely on his pace, but pace is a big part of his game. The recovery actions and stuff like that in defense. So that does kind of make sense at the same time. Now, next is a bit of a negative story. I think we knew this was coming. But nothing's confirmed as of yet. But I'd imagine, I think we know what's going to happen next. This one's about Tim Steidten. Now, obviously, I'm not going to pay to read a Daily Mail article, but Sammy Mockbell is one of the more reliable people on this platform. And this is just a general statement as well, but I don't think this is anything to really write home about. But I think we all know where this is going. Tim Steiden's future is in doubt. I will do a full video on Tim Steidten and the highs and lows of his reign at West Ham when he leaves eventually. But for now, I'm just going to talk about this. Now, cool, his future's in doubt. I think we all saw this coming. The reason why we all saw this coming is because the power shifted again. Now, somehow David Sullivan has managed to scapegoat someone else for a bad transfer window when David Sullivan has never had a better transfer window than this at West Ham United. I'm not saying that all the players are perfect, but what I am saying is the revisionism of the transfer window is quite alarming from some people, and they couldn't see that it was a coaching issue rather than a player issue. However, however, there are things to criticize Tim Steidten on for sure. If you got to give someone praise, you got to give someone the backlash as well. I'm completely fair with that. I've said that him identifying Mavropanos as a centre back alternative is my main criticism of him. That's my main one. And if I was going to go off him hiring Lopetegui, which we all know that it wasn't him that hired Lopetegui now, I would have criticised him for that as well. But I think we all know now that we've hired two free agent managers, that we know it's David Sullivan and the board upstairs. I don't, but for all the people that wanted Tim Steidten out, what are you expecting to happen next at West Ham United? Are you expecting us to get an upgrade on the sporting director role or a technical director? They're all the same thing, by the way. Because you know what's going to happen. It's going to be Sullivan running the transfers again. And it's quite alarming because obviously Potter sideways the question of Tim Steidten in his first ever press conference as well. So again, you kind of expect what's going to happen, despite the fact I'm sure Tim Steidten's going to stick out his job for the time being. But he's probably going to leave very soon. He'll probably leave in the summer. I'm going to predict he'll leave in the summer. I want him to stay. I want him to run the transfers. But if all your power's being taken from you from what you were hired for in the first place, feel free to leave. Feel free to leave. Because we all know where we should be directing our anger towards realistically. So again, that's another one that's like up for debate, the whole Tim Steidten thing. My problem is that people online made it a whole, because Tim Steiden's in and because he wanted to get rid of David Moyes, there's now a whole Steidten versus Moyes thing. So if you were Moyes in, you got to hate on Steidten, and if you were Moyes out, you got to love everything Steidten does. I don't know why people do that. They did the same with the whole Moyes versus Lopetegui thing. Guess what? They both needed to be sacked for completely different reasons. But that's interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments of that one as well. But let's get into our last story. Obviously, yesterday we were speaking about midfielders, speaking about Banzuzi. It seems like everyone, including myself, jumped the gun to see if that was done or not, even though Sky tried to confirm it. Proves you can't believe Sky Sports either in 2025. They are basically the Carlos Sanchez's of sources nowadays when it comes to confirming stuff, because half of their stuff comes from Twitter. So I don't know why they did a whole exclusive. I think it was Rob Dorset. That did a whole exclusive about Banzuzi having a medical tomorrow, which would have been today. But we haven't even agreed a fee yet. So what's the point? But speaking of midfielders, and this is Ben Jacobs. So again, take this with a pinch of salt. We've been linked with this guy pretty much. We're always linked with a player from Sunderland. I don't know why, but we've been linked with Ballard before, the centre back, and Joe Bellingham. But now we're linked with Dan Neil. Understand Everton and West Ham are both considering a move for Sunderland midfielder Dan Neil. Now let's talk about it. Now I think it's best to take a look at like the player profiling. So let's go to Transfermarkt. I've watched this guy a few times. Not enough to give you like a full like deep analysis of him, but I think he'd be a good option. Put it that way. Like he's a centre midfielder, mainly like he can play deeper areas, but he does like to go forward as well. He can chip in with a goal. I'm not saying he's a goal scoring midfielder either, but he's kind of. I feel like this is kind of an alternative. If we was to go in for him, it's an alternative for the Keenan Dewsbury Hall sort of thing. But Dewsbury Hall is a slightly more like it goes forward a little bit more than Daniel does. So I'm not. I think Daniel like he likes to put a foot in. He likes to put a foot in, but yeah, he's a box-to-box midfielder. But also, I looked player agent Wasserman. I swear we've used that agency before to sign players. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure Flint Downs is by the same agent at the time that we signed him. And also, what's his name? Mark Warburton. When we got him as a coach. So that's one to look out for as well. But it is interesting to see us linked to midfielders because I do think we need one. I need one, if not two. But obviously mainly a striker. We're still not linked with any form of striker apart from the Strasbourg one, which I talked about yesterday on my YouTube Shorts and TikTok and stuff. But that's a problem in itself. The lack of attackers that we're linked to, the lack of attackers we've been in advanced, even in advanced talks, just in general. But what I want to see, I don't want to see in general in this transfer window, David Sullivan taken over. If you're going to bring in new recruits because it's Graham Potter, then bring in those new recruits and we can trust them instead. But I don't see the point of kicking out Steidten because he's not a problem. But I feel like this is pure scapegoating again from the ownership. But here we are. Make sure to leave a like on the video, people. Make sure to subscribe if you are new. My social medias are in the description if you want to follow me, and the email for the inquiries when I road to 1K subscribers. Let's try to hit that as soon as possible, people. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.